Chapter 17. Dr. Kemp's Visitor. In Chapter 17 of the book, Dr. Kemp, who is unaware of the Invisible Man's existence, hears gunshots outside and becomes curious about the situation. After completing some work, he goes downstairs and hears the doorbell ring, but his servant tells him it was just a false alarm. Later on, he notices bloodstains in the house and eventually comes face to face with the Invisible Man himself. The Invisible Man reveals that he has become invisible through his own creation and requests food, clothing, and a place to rest. Kemp, recognizing the Invisible Man as Griffin, agrees to help but is kept in the dark about the details of his transformation. Griffin's condition starts to deteriorate, making him agitated and feverish. He shares with Kemp his encounters with Marvel, who attempted to steal from him, and the difficulties he faced at the inn. However, Griffin is unwilling to divulge too much information about his invisibility, fearing that it may jeopardize his safety. Feeling exhausted, Griffin expresses the need for sleep, but worries about being captured by others. Kemp offers him his own room to rest in, which Griffin reluctantly accepts. However, Griffin becomes alarmed when he realizes that his presence has inadvertently planted the idea of capturing him in Kemp's mind. Chapter 18. The Invisible Man Sleeps. In Chapter 18 of the book, the Invisible Man, who is exhausted and wounded, doesn't trust Kemp's promise to let him sleep undisturbed. He checks the windows and doors to ensure he has an escape route and then asks to be left alone to rest. Kemp leaves the room, but is surprised when the Invisible Man's dressing gown warns him not to try to capture him. Kemp finds himself locked out of his own bedroom and realizes the unbelievable truth about the Invisible Man's existence. Kemp tries to understand the situation by reading about the havoc caused by the Invisible Man in Iping and Port Burdock. He becomes concerned about the potential danger posed by the Invisible Man, who appears to be becoming more violent and unstable. Kemp considers contacting Colonel Oddie in Port Burdock for assistance. While Kemp ponders his options, the Invisible Man wakes up in a bad mood and starts creating noise upstairs. Kemp rushes to investigate, and the chapter ends with mounting tension as the Invisible Man becomes increasingly unpredictable. Chapter 19. Certain First Principle. In Chapter 19, Kemp pays a visit to the Invisible Man, who is still in a foul mood after destroying some objects. During their conversation, Kemp informs the Invisible Man that the world is aware of his actions in Iping and Port Burdock, but his current whereabouts remain unknown. Kemp offers his assistance and asks the Invisible Man to explain the mechanics of his invisibility. The Invisible Man proceeds to explain that he has a background in physics and has conducted studies on light refraction. Through his research, he managed to develop a formula that can alter the refractive index of a substance to match that of air, resulting in invisibility. He conducted experiments using various materials and realized that living organisms, including humans, are primarily composed of translucent tissue, making it possible for them to become invisible. Kemp expresses amazement and recalls contemplating transparent sea creatures such as jellyfish the night before. The Invisible Man then shares another breakthrough in physiology. He discovered a method to strip the red color from blood without affecting its functionality. Despite these groundbreaking findings, the Invisible Man encountered financial struggles and constant interference from his professor. Due to a lack of funds, he was unable to continue his work and ultimately resorted to stealing from his own father, who tragically took his own life as a result. The chapter concludes with the Invisible Man confessing to this shocking act, exposing the depths of desperation he experienced in his pursuit of his invisibility experiments. Chapter 20. At the House in Great Portland Street. In this chapter, The Invisible Man shares his experiences after becoming invisible. He conducted experiments on animals in an attempt to make them transparent, like himself. He also describes his unsuccessful efforts to make a cat invisible. Fearing discovery, he decides to flee from his current residence, but is confronted by his landlord and others who suspect him of illegal activity. To avoid being caught, he sets fire to the house and vanishes into the streets, exhilarated by the advantage of invisibility and the opportunities it presents. Chapter 21. In Oxford Street. In this chapter, the Invisible Man faces a series of comical and dangerous incidents as he navigates the streets after becoming invisible. Initially feeling triumphant and reveling in his advantage over others, he walks down Oxford Street but struggles to manage his invisibility, stumbling and knocking over a man carrying soda water siphons. He also gets hit by a cabman. Seeking refuge, he hastily jumps into a hansom cab and drives along Oxford Street and Tottenham Court Road. However, his mood quickly changes as he realizes the gravity of his situation. He starts to feel the effects of his invisibility, experiencing freezing temperatures and bruises. He must also grapple with how to handle this newfound ability. Trying to avoid detection, he narrowly escapes a dog's keen sense of smell and steers clear of a crowd of Salvation Army worshippers. Seeking a hiding spot, he crouches on the steps of a house but leaves muddy footprints that are spotted by two boys. As people begin to follow the footprints, he flees in an attempt to shake them off. Unfortunately, his string of mishaps leaves him with a cold and in pain. Continuing his journey through less crowded streets, he is devastated to discover his lodging on fire. With his clothes, equipment, and resources destroyed, he realizes he has burned all his bridges and feels trapped and vulnerable. The chapter concludes with the Invisible Man pausing in his narration, leaving Kemp anxiously urging him to continue.